What's up everybody, and thank you for joining me for another video. My name is Whack4863, but you can call me Whack. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the Isle of Siptah versus the Exiled Lands. And I get this question on a pretty regular basis where people ask me which map I prefer. And I've been meaning to do this video for quite some time, and I'm just now getting around to it. Now let me take you through a little bit of the journey that I've gone through with the Isle of Siptah and the Exiled Lands. I've played on the Exiled Lands for a long time, every day actually, for multiple hours a day for well over a year. And I really enjoy Conan Exiles as a game. Now, when the Isle of Siptah first launched into early access, I gotta be honest with you, I absolutely hated it. I did not like anything about it. I didn't like the storm. I didn't like the fact that the storm would damage your base. I didn't like the way that the sigils worked when you put them in your inventory. I thought that it was very disjointed and not connected, and that the content that was available on the Isle of Siptah was lacking in the amount of things that you could do. I really didn't feel like the experience was all that much different from what I was getting in the Exiled Lands. Fast forward to the full release of the Isle of Siptah, and I do feel like the Isle of Siptah has changed enough that the experience is different from what you get on the Exiled Lands. I do still feel like the content may be lacking in the area of dungeons and different content to do. I feel like a lot of the vaults feel the same, and since the vaults are the main content for the Isle of Siptah, that means that at some point you'll probably get bored with what there is to do on the Isle of Siptah. On the side of content, I really like what they have on the Exiled Lands. Now, that does not mean that they won't continue to develop the Isle of Siptah, add more dungeons, add different things. I do like the pools and the way that they set up the lower islands. I think those are really cool. However, I don't feel like that fills the need for different types of content on that map. So if we're talking about the amount of content being the deciding factor for which map to play on, the Exiled Lands is the clear choice. But you have to think about the Exiled Lands this way as well. They have had multiple years to develop and implement some of these dungeons. It's happened over years and years and years where they've continued to add this content. If we see the same trend with the Isle of Siptah will grow its content well over what there is available on the Exiled Lands, at least currently. And I bring that up because one simple thing. Funcom has stated that they will continue to support updates for the Exiled Lands. They haven't said that they're going to walk away or that it's finished. However, if we look at the track record over the last 6 to 8 months, there hasn't been anything added to the Exiled Lands that is specific to the Exiled Lands. Everything has launched to Siptah and the Exiled Lands together. And I would say that the main focus has been Siptah, and that's probably a good thing since it is their newest DLC, and there are some things that still need to be worked out with the Isle of Siptah. And I have no doubt that Funcom is working on yet another DLC. This is a live game, as they put it, so more DLCs will come and more content will come. The big question will be, will there be content specific to the Exiled Lands or specific to the Isle of Siptah? Will they launch new content that's free with the DLCs on both of the different maps? I don't know. That is something we'll have to see in the future. Now, I went off on a little rabbit trail there just to give you an idea of where my mind is and what I'm thinking about. So, the Exiled Lands obviously has more content, but the Isle of Siptah could get more content in the future. Now, the reason why I love playing on the Isle of Siptah mainly is because I actually feel like a boss on the Isle of Siptah. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I feel like I can go out and complete most of that content by myself, allowing me to be the hero of my own story. Sure, I have the thrall, sure, I have the pet, and I can decide whether I want to take them with me or not. There are only a few places in the Isle of Siptah where I really feel like a thrall actually needs to be there in order for me to complete that content. Whereas if we look at the Exiled Lands, there is more content on the Exiled Lands that I feel needs to be completed with a thrall, and a lot of that comes from the ability to build your character in specific ways to conquer content. If we look at the armors on the Isle of Siptah versus the armors on the Exiled Lands, the Isle of Siptah armors are way better, and these are the things that you can craft. These armors on the Isle of Siptah are way better than what you can get on the Exiled Lands. I put a light armor build on my channel and called it the Immortal Blender, and that armor build has more armor than most of the medium or even some of the heavy armors that you can get in the Exiled Lands. Additionally, the bonuses to the attributes that you get with the armors that you craft on the Isle of Siptah are way higher than most of the armors that you can craft in the Exiled Lands, making it so that just your armor alone makes you a better, more formidable foe when you're facing all the different content. On top of that, I absolutely love the changes to the sigils. The sigils originally just increased your damage against storm monsters. Now each one of them has a specific job that it does, and I love being able to load those sigils into my character and become a more formidable foe. So if we look at doing the same things that the sigils do in the Exiled Lands, you actually need equipment. So if we look at the champion armor, it removes bleed, it removes poison, it removes corruption, it removes the cripple and different things like that. You actually have to play in that armor to have those abilities. And even at that, it's not as good as just loading the sigils into your character. If I remember right, the champion armor clears those things from your body on a 30-second tick, where the sigils actually clear those things from your character on a 3-second tick. So I really feel like this is just stacking up to say that there are more unique items on the Isle of Siptah than there are on the Exiled Lands. Funcom started to add unique items to the Exiled Lands quite some time ago, but then those things started to get stripped out. And I'll give you an example of one of those things. The Act of Violence was a one-handed axe that would do critical damage. It had a counterpart, the Doomhammer, that did the exact same thing. Now these were great different weapons, but they were found to be too powerful by many of the PvP community, and thus critical was stripped from the game. And I haven't even started to talk about the weapons that are available on the Isle of Siptah. It seems like everywhere you go, you find a weapon with a unique ability. And this is really cool and really nice for creating a character or a build the way that you want it to be. I'll make an example of the Outer Dark weapons. The Outer Dark daggers are actually just a copy of the Shank daggers from when they were bugged in game. If you don't know, at one point in time, the Shank daggers actually applied Sunder, and this was found to be a bug with the Shank daggers. However, they took that bug and just implemented it across all the Outer Dark weapons. One thing that I really like about Conan Exiles as a whole is that at some point in your gameplay, you reach a point where you're no longer struggling to survive. You're no longer on the heels of your feet and have to go and do certain things in order to just survive. At some point, Conan Exiles kind of moves from the survival genre into the hack and slash genre. And I think this really resonates with me because I'm big into the button mashing hack and slash games like God of War or Devil May Cry. And I feel like with the unique items that are on the Isle of Siptah, allowing me to have the more unique build or the more powerful build to conquer the different content that's on the Isle of Siptah, fills the need for that hack and slash style gameplay more than the Exiled Lands does. Now, the developers at Funcom have mentioned at least a couple of times that they want the player to be the hero. They don't want you relying on your thrall to conquer all the content. And I feel like the Isle of Siptah has done that more than the Exiled Lands, and that really is the reason why I prefer the gameplay on the Isle of Siptah over the gameplay on the Exiled Lands. And Funcom has a real big decision to make at this point in time, whether they want to try to bridge the gap between what's happening on the Isle of Siptah and what's happening in the Exiled Lands. The armor, the equipment, the weapons, the whole 9 yards, your character on the Exiled Lands is not as good as your character can be on the Isle of Siptah. And with the ability to now transfer servers, it does mean that when you take a character from the Isle of Siptah with the good gear and equipment that you get on the Isle of Siptah, it makes a disparity against all of those players that haven't played on the Isle of Siptah. Now, this really is only a big deal for PvP. Like I've stated in the past, I could absolutely care less if someone from the Isle of Siptah comes over to the Exiled Lands in PvE and just wrecks shop on everything. And I'd rather see things boosted on the Exiled Lands than to be nerfed on the Isle of Siptah. However, it's going to be a ton of work should they decide to go down the balancing path. If they decide not to go down the balancing path, what they can expect is a big backlash, I'm sure, from the PvP community. But as long as they have thick skin and they don't worry about it, they can just continue to create content the way that they've been creating it. There's nothing that says that a game absolutely has to be balanced, and there's nothing that says that a game can't be pay to win. Sure, there's some negative connotation to it and maybe some negative press that comes with it, but the fact of the matter is that it's their game and they can develop it the way that they want to. And I've said this in private to Funcom a couple of times, but I'm going to say it publicly in case they're watching, and so that all of you understand my point of view as I look at the content that they create. I really want the content that they create to be their own content. I don't want them to take absolutely everything from the community and try to jam it in the game. I've told them multiple times on different occasions to focus on their initial vision for Conan Exiles and execute updates and patches based on that measuring stick. If something is recommended for a future content patch and it doesn't line up with what their expectation or what their vision was for Conan Exiles when they originally started developing it, it should be scrutinized and looked at very carefully before they decide to put it in game. This is a game that many of us fell in love with because of that original vision, and I want to see that original vision continue on through future updates. Now, there's so much more that I like about the Isle of Siptah and the gameplay mechanics. Thinking of purges in general, you actually have the ability to decide to have more purges or no purges or less purges. All of those options are available to you on the Isle of Siptah, where they're not available to you in the Exiled Lands. Additionally, thrall hunting on the Isle of Siptah is probably easier than it is on the Exiled Lands because you can actually summon thralls through the ley shrines. This opens up the ability to play the game however you want even more on the Isle of Siptah than it is in the Exiled Lands. And yet those are more reasons why I enjoy Siptah more than I do the Exiled Lands. Now, I want to know in the comment section below which map is your favorite and why. The whack moments in this video were sponsored by my legendary supporters. If you'd like to become a member, you can click the button below that says join. That'll give you all the details. And if you want to continue the fun, there's 2 videos on the screen. You can pick one of those to watch next. Please don't forget to whack the like button, and if you're new to the channel, I'd encourage you to click that subscribe button, click that bell so you get notified when I upload another video.